Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep the science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that married households, the champagne is rarely of a first brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in the consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else would bring one anyway? Eating as usual, I see.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
You have nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
Oh, perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young?
Oh, merely
Who's coming for tea?
Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very, very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then all the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll do my very best to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all this time.
That's quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen.
Oh!
Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Oh! And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth would you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole confusion of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, LG, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he was here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no good in offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think it rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter now. For now that I look at the inscription, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it hundreds of times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I do not propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should discuss in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, a charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with my fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Huh? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That's a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That's absolutely absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
My dear fellow, you have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd that you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. This is proof that your name is Ernest, and I'll keep it if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, boy, you much better have the whole thing out at once.
My dear Algie, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist, but one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists do. Now, go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Carden, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Carden. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, from motives of respect that you possibly couldn't understand. Lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is this place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. May I tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I've Bunbury all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Dear Algie, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's the duty to do so. And, as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you are a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I have ever met.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anyway tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and sent down with either no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farker, who always flirts with her own husband from across the table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you all the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of her. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that's nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My fellow, it is not easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ringing that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Worthing.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumber sandwiches, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle will have to dine upstairs. Surely he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Berrybun made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. Shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary beauty of life. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. If one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot have. People always seem to think they are either improper and look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mama.
day it has been, Miss Fairfax?
Hey, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I'm always quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I have ever met ever since I've met you.
Yes. Well, I'm quite aware of that fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpit, so I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest.
Oh, you really love me, Gwendolyn.
There is something in the name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really do love me, Gwendolyn.
No, passionately, of course.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you wouldn't love me then?
This is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, it has very little reference to the actual facts of life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't care much about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say I think there are lots of much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance.
Jack? Oh, no. There's very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. And I have known several Jacks, and they are all, without exception, more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. I pity any young woman who's married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, the only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. We must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
Oh, well, I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it is only fair to tell you, quite frankly beforehand, that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Oh, Gwendolyn. My own one, I've loved you more than anyone in the world.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All his girlfriends tell me so. Oh, what wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when other people are present. Mr. Worthing.
Rise from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing hasn't quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come to a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
I'm 29.
A very good age to be married at. Now, I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England and South Africa, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in waterproof. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the taxes expected of one during one's lifetime and the taxes exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to offer either profit or pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, it's only the poachers that are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn can hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it's let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Well, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume.
Oh.
Now, what are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I don't really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, well, they almost count as DP. They dine with us or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I don't really know. The fact is, Lady Ragnar, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who my parents are, or who I am at birth. Well, I was, found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he had happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place at Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
Oh, handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag, a somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. It's an ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake of his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, and probably has indeed been used for that purpose before now. But it could hardly be considered an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then, what would you advise me to do? I can hardly say that I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't know how I could possibly manage to do that. I could produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I think it should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, To marry him to a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Well, good morning. Oh, for goodness sake, Algie, stop singing that ghastly tone. What is the matter with you?
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn has refused you? I know it is a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like in real life, but she's definitely isn't. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own answer that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest idea of how to live, nor the smallest inclination of when to die.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, I thought that I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in the future in about 50, 100 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy.
Oh, no.
No man does. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Well, my dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a sweet, refined girl as she is. What extraordinary ideas you have on how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she is pretty, and to someone else, if she is plain.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't. But what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, well, before the end of the week, I shall have gotten rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy nowadays, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's a sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say it was a severe chill.
You sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Oh, very well then. My poor brother Ernest was suddenly carried away off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cicely is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she's only just turned 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty young ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn I'm perfectly certain, will be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything, in about half an hour they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a great lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go dress. Do you know it's nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Well, what shall we do after dinner? Should we go to the theatre?
No, I loathe listening.
Well, let's go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire around 10.
Oh no, I can't bear looking at things. It's too silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work to do nothing. However, I don't mind hard work if there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at age 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address in Albany I have, but what is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I'll communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. LG, you may turn around now.
Thank you, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you off to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, please, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back until Monday. You can put up my dress clothes and my smoking jackets and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
You really are a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is this sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you amused at?
Oh, I'm a little anxious about poor Bunbury. That's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape one day.
But I love scrapes. They are the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense, LG. You only ever talk about nonsense.
Nobody does.
Laugh now. Unburying is funny. Not just like highlight yourself in the context. No. You can have angles because it is now gay.
such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray, open it up at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know
Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I shall probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel. I wrote one myself in my earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I used the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. Do your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had one. Indeed, I was thinking about that, and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I I think, dear doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all. And a walk might do it some good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the Rand you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid economy, horrid geography, horrid German!
Mr. Ernest Worthing has driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were here in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
I'm really not wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope that you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I don't. I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
My what?
You're emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy me an outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Oh, I don't think you'll require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
He said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
That I am afraid I'm not. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you wouldn't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind of my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should remember that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I've never had any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marechal Neil?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why? such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
Well, they are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are much too alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
But believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often, I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be dependent on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagances.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it's a sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No. He died abroad, in Paris in fact. I had a telegram sent from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it said.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seemed to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or in the present case, distressing.
Ah, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right. I mean, of course, you're continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it's not for any child, dear doctor. I am very fond of children. No, the fact is, I like to be christened myself. This afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already?
I don't remember anything about it.
Have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would be a bother to you in any way, or if you think I'm too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Mr. Jenkins the carter. A very hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along other babies. It would be rather childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am pleased to see you back. Oh, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
Oh, Uncle Jack, how do look happy. You look as if you had toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me particularly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what this all means. I think it's perfectly absurd.
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I've given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Oh no, nothing would induce me to take his hand.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He's been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
Oh yes, he told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury. Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit all the faults were on my side, but I must say that I think Brother John's coldness towards me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel. You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I do not allow any bunbury in here.
I have put Mr. Earnings' things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right?
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large lunch box.
I'm afraid I cannot stay more than a week this time.
Noome, order the dog cart. Mr. Ernest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman never once interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling, isn't she?
You are not to talk about Miss Cardew like that. I do not like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous. Why don't you just go up and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You're certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4-5 train.
I certainly won't leave you as long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, it's better than being as overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage. Your presence in my garden, utterly absurd. However, you have to take the 4-5 train, and I hope you'll have a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go, and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
And have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. In the absence of old friends, one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
The dog cart can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes?
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great, British Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Your diary? I'd give anything to look at that diary.
No. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
I'll tell her around to come around next week at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying until next week at the same hour.
Well, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course. Why have we been engaged for the last 3 months?
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prison. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him, after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully great taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write all your letters for you. I was always 3 times a week, and sometimes often.
Well, do let me read them.
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Oh, yes, of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but I had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say that you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Or any name you like. Take Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you would object to a name such as Algernon. It is not a bad name at all. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who end up in bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here, I suppose, suppose, is thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important christening, on most important business.
Oh,
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
considering we've been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Is it Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I feel so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. That's a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say, and my first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
Of course.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Oh, then it's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this may be a favourable opportunity for mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home to me seems to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It's part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a very short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. He has never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I've met you. But I'm bound to state that now that I know that you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do! I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42. And more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty to him would be impossible, as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many of the most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. Now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems most distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship quite like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in this Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it's any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you. If it caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into some foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It's obvious that our social spheres have been widely different. Shall I lay the tea here, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Oh, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
And that's Miss Fairfax.
Yes, miss.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have other calls to make of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest. A moment. May I ask you if you are to be engaged to marry this young lady?
To dear old Cecily? Of course not. One would put such an idea to your pretty little head.
Oh, thank you. You may.
Yes, I knew there must be some sort of misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
This is Ernest.
Cecily, my darling.
A moment. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what, young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. Why could I put such a silly little idea like that into your head?
Oh, thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief. Algernon Moncrief! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but my name is certainly John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily, my sweet round Gwyn. You will call me sister now.
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to let us know where your brother Ernest guest is at present.
Cicely, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. And I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly, I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest inclination of ever having one in future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never, not of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow us there.
No, men are so cowardly, are they not?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbling, I suppose?
Yes. And a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
You have no right whatsoever to bumble here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury where anyone chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows this.
Serious Bunburys! Oh, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury has quite exploded. You won't be going back to town quite so often as you used to now, dear Algie. And that's a very good thing too.
Well, your brother is a little off-colour, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defence at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, and thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. That is all. I loved her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
That is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How could you sit there, eating muffins, when we were in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You seem to me perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It's the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under these circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me will know, I refuse everything except food and drink. And at the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm very unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should be eating them in that greedy way.
Oh, I wish you would have some tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose any man can eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless for you to eat muffins under these circumstances. It's a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same. simply ask me to leave without having given me some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except for vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I've made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30. I will naturally take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I have been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable that I was never christened at all. Even Dr. Chasuble thinks so. And you have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Oh. Yes, but you have been christened. That is the importance.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite so sure about you having ever been christened, I might say it's rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off in Paris by a severe chill.
Well, but you said yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that's nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. Told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
Oh, but I hate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up for your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality.
Algernon, I've already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea. I'm still eating my muffins.
Follow us at once into the house, as anyone would have done, seems to me to show that they at least have some sense of shame left.
We've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
Oh, they're approaching. How very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
Certainly not.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Absolutely.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, doesn't it?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But it does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming to see me in town as often as possible?
Can you doubt it?
I have the gravest doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth on it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes, I mean, no.
True, I had quite forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
Please, are you ready to face this terrible ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk about the equality of sexes where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme of the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this point. At this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to be married to Lady Bracknell.
You will have nothing of the kind, sir. Now, as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if this is the house that your invalid friend, Mr. Berrybun, resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here at all. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Yes, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? He quite exploded.
Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean to say he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, I ask Mr. Worthing, who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cicely Carden, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Graves Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporring, Fifeshire, NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markbay, and Markbay.
Markby and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have, also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation on the measles, both the German and English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favour of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000, and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady. have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature intended. But we can soon alter that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, sweet child. Oh, no. It is the profile that interested me. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high just at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. And that consent, I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, indeed ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, but your nephew is somewhat, I don't approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew? Algernon? Impossible. He went to Tucky's.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of false pretense of being my brother. And under an assumed name, he drank. And I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint of my Dom Perignon Brut 89 wine that I was specially preserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded, in the course of the afternoon, in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first time that I had never had a brother, that I never will have a brother, and I do not intend of having any kind of brother. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18. But admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent matters very much at all.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her father's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have of their own free choice remained 35 years. Lady Dumbleton is an instant in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40. Many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cicely should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for everybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will allow gladly your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be aware that what you propose is entirely out of the question.
Then, a passionate celibacy is all that any of us could look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasson.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptist, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism, did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Allow me to detain you for a moment. The matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been, for the last 3 years, Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Come here, Prism. Prism? Where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written in my unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that info.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria! The Brighton
retire to my room at once. Gwendolyn, wait for me here.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
Noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible.
Last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prison? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in my younger and happier days. And here is the stain it received on its lining by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood, I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience without it all these years.
Miss Prison, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You!
Yes, mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone on those who have suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you what happened.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me as to who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algy's elder brother.
I knew I had a brother all this time. How could you have ever doubted that I've had a brother? Miss Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Noddy, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prison, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Oh, Algy, you little scoundrel. You've never treated me like a brother all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, however, I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name? Now that you've become someone else.
Oh, good heavens. I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then I had better... Then the matter had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Oh, every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what's my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Durban climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algie, can't you recollect what our father's name was?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, of the time, I suppose, Sir Custer.
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Ah, here we go. M. Generals. Malam, Max Boham, Magalake. What ghastly names these men have. Mark Bay, Mobs, Moncrief, Lieutenant Moncrief, 1840. Captain Lieutenant. Lieutenant, Colonel General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. I've always told you, I've always told you that my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it's Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest! My Ernest! I felt from the moment I met you, you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he's been speaking nothing but truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you're sure to change.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last!
Cecily, at last!
Gwendolyn, at last!
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.